and good evening, everybody. I hope you're having a great week so far, beginning of the week. And Monday's always a busy day because I do a lot of different working on videos, even if I don't get all those uploaded. And we always have breakfast at the clubhouse. It's just busy. One of the things that I did today is I signed me and Joe up to take Spanish lessons because I figured if we live in Arizona, we should learn how to speak Spanish. So that should be a fun time. Every Wednesday morning, we're going to have class at the library. And the nice thing about it is the library down here does it for free. You don't have to pay for it. And I just thought, one of the things my mom and dad said when we first started coming down here, my dad said he wished he had learned Spanish 20 years ago. And actually really 25 years ago, because they've been coming down a long time. But there's a lot of people in here already. Hey, Barb, Julie, Charmaine, how are ya? Charles is here. Yay, hello. And Angie Girl is here. Hello, everybody. Yeah, it's going to be a fun night because we are going to talk about dehydrating and what to dehydrate and what's the weirdest thing you've ever dehydrated in your life. So lots of fun things in our half hour of our live stream. Make sure that you pop on over to the Vineyard Chicks either during or after, because their lives are always longer than mine. And Craig is here. Hey, Craig, how are you? Tell Debbie I said hi. And first of all, Happy New Year to everybody. Now, back in Wyoming, I have a large dehydrator, an Excalibur. It is like the king of dehydrators. But I've had it for a long time, easily 3, 4 or more years. And it was kind of spendy then. But when I looked at them, because I wanted to buy a dehydrator down here, they were like $500. That wasn't in my budget. So I had to look around, and I found this one that had really good ratings on Amazon for less than $100. I think it actually was about $60. And so I have done my first dehydrating with it. Oh, Debbie's in warm Texas. You should have went with her because it's cold in South Dakota. I just have a convection fan in my oven, so I'm limited to 2 trays. But, I mean, you can dehydrate in your oven. The problem is that ovens used to be able to go much lower in temperature, and now most ovens anymore, 175. But if you have that convection and you can just blow the air at the lowest temperature possible, so good, because it's going to dehydrate it very fast, and it's going to circulate around all your vegetables or herbs or fruits, whatever you're dehydrating. And so a telemarketer. It said on my phone, telemarketer. It's like a never-ending thing every single day. Telemarketers. And now that I'm almost 65, almost every single day, somebody calls me with Medicaid supplements. So it's crazy. And Ann is here. Hey, Ann, how are ya? Oh, proofer set at 110. That perfect. Now, what I just was dehydrating the last few days, and I left it on my sheets because I wanted to show it to you because we were doing that, is mushrooms. Now, this entire tray was literally, I mean, they weren't touching, but they certainly were right next to each other. And then when they shrink up, look at all that space in between them. But the best thing I think about mushrooms when you're dehydrating them, of course, they rehydrate really easy, and so you can put them in soups or whatever you're using. But I like to eat them like candy because the starch in there has turned to sugar, and I find it very sweet. And so I like just munching on them instead of some kind of candy. So, and everybody is saying hi, and Todd is in here. Good evening, young man. I hope you are having a happy new year. So he's saying hi to Ange, and so that is perfect. It's worth reading the oven manual to find out what kinds of hidden features there are. That is so true. In fact, yesterday we had the Elvis dinner at the clubhouse, and we were talking about that very same thing. That so many times people just don't know all the things that their oven will do. And we have some really nice ovens down there. And you can have it regular baking. You can have it convection baking. You can broil it. You can do all these different settings on all this different stuff that it will do. But some of those ladies, they don't like those ovens. And it's just like, you just got to know how to turn them on, turn them off, and set the time that you want. But, our little oven here, you click bake, then you click another button, and you get to adjust the temperature. And then you have to click bake again. Well, that's what those ladies were trying to do down there. Well, they were turning it off. So it would start to work, but it didn't work. So it was kind of interesting. Anne says that she hadn't thought of eating mushrooms like that. Anne, you will just be so amazed. These are just those little button mushrooms that you buy at the store. I have some oyster mushrooms growing. I just started them. I had the grains, and so I mixed them with some soil mulch kind of stuff, and so they're outside. And today when I looked at them, so it's been, less than a week, and you can see the mycelium going through there. So the mushrooms are starting to grow, and it's changing that dark soil in spots to white, and then eventually it'll come up. But I put them in tubs that were clear plastic so I could video it. So then I can dehydrate those oyster mushrooms. Like I love oyster mushrooms, but sometimes all of a sudden you got this ton of mushrooms, and what are you going to do with them all? And some mushrooms will work to freeze and some won't work to freeze, but you can always dehydrate them. So in the chat today, tell me the weirdest thing you've ever dehydrated. And if it worked, if it didn't work, and if you're going to try it again, what would you do differently? Because some things, it's a matter of that maybe the temperature wasn't quite right. It should have been lower or higher. Things like that. So Julie says, I have some celery in the refrigerator that needs to be dealt with. Maybe I'll dehydrate instead of freezing. I have dehydrated celery so many times, and it works perfect, and it shrinks up so much. Last summer, I did a video on dehydrating my Swiss chard. So I had this great big huge sink full. I mean, it was piled with Swiss chard. And by the time it got all done, then I ground it in my Vitamix. You got this little tiny bit of Swiss chard out of that great big thing. But then I just add a little teeny bit to different things because it dehydrates or rehydrates, and it has great flavor. But if you really need some space-saving stuff, dehydrating is really a way to go. And Anne says she loves watching mushrooms grow. Me too. Oh, and she has dehydrated mushrooms. Awesome. Celery sticks. Yes, that's what Julie could do with those. I like peanut butter and then sprinkle some raisins on celery sticks. I like that. Some people put cream cheese and different things on them. I think you could put cream cheese and some of Angie's habanero honey, mix that in with the cream cheese, put on the celery sticks. Oh, they'd be good. Angie puts her scraps in her fire cider. Oh, never again. She doesn't like that. Okay. Interesting. But you never know when you're making fire cider until you try it when you're adding extra things, if you're going to like it or not. They really shrink. I like grinding them too, Charmaine, because it's got, you're right, it's got all that flavor, no strings, but it really can flavor things that you're making. A lot of times I'll sprinkle things over roasts and different meats that I'm cooking, and all those juices from the the meat that's cooking, it kind of rehydrates and makes that soft, and all those juices go down into the meat, and I really like that. But when you look in your garden, one thing I think people overlook when they could be dehydrating it is all those leaves that you have, broccoli leaves, any kind of brassica, from kohlrabi leaves to broccoli to Brussels sprouts, cabbage leaves, because a lot of times people will keep those few leaves around, like the cabbage, and the rest of the leaves, they don't really do anything. That where they could be all summer long, when the head is forming, you could start breaking some of those leaves off, chopping them up and dehydrating them. One of the things I'm going to try this year, because my new little dehydrator came with a recipe book, and they were mixing yogurt and strawberries, and they had blended it all up, and then they were making fruit roll-ups, which I've made fruit roll-ups in my dehydrator lots of times, especially when the kids were younger. Well, actually, more for me and Joe. But you either have to have one of those plastic sheets, or you have to have what they call dehydrating foil. Some people will use wax paper or parchment paper and use that, because otherwise it will go through your little holes in your trays. But the dehydrating foil lets it breathe a little bit more than it would otherwise. Oh, Julie says that she had terrible luck one year growing cauliflowers. So I just ate all the leaves. See, it's tasty. It tastes just like cauliflower. That's why when I'm making broccoli soup or cauliflower soup or whatever, there's always all kinds of the stalks and the leaves chopped up in there. So why not dehydrate them? I didn't know that. Do you cut them up when you dehydrate them? I do cut them up. Like on the leaves, what I do is I roll them up, and then I slice. And you can do it just like that. Or once you unroll them, you can chop them a couple times too. Either way, it'll dehydrate, and then you just spread it all over those trays. And because I think from what I've read, it's only usually the United States that throws all that stuff away. Like Asian countries, they use all of it, all the stalks, all the leaves. If it goes to seed, they're using those stalks and the seed pods. They're using every single bit of that vegetable. Why don't we do that? Because I don't know, because we just don't. And maybe it's because people don't realize that you can eat all those brassica leaves. I have some bok choy I'm about to cut. Well, I planted all 6 of them at the same time. And so how am I going to eat 6 of them? So I have to decide what to do. Am I going to chop them up and freeze them? But I'm actually going to dehydrate them. So we'll use a couple of them fresh, and I'll let the other one sit in the garden. But if it gets too far gone, I'm just going to chop them up and dehydrate them. But I like that. Yeah, I think that's true. And most people don't realize all the things you can dehydrate. Oh, dehydrate kimchi. Now that is an interesting thought, because I really like kimchi. That's interesting. I'll have to try that. Yeah. You like Christine? Hi, Christine. Likes to dehydrate persimmons. They taste like candy and look beautiful with the star in the middle. The holidays found me dehydrating limes, lemons, oranges, grapefruits, and I added them to my teas. This week I am dehydrating lemons from my mom's tree. My big lemons. I'm not dehydrating. I shouldn't say I'm not dehydrating completely. I am dehydrating the zest from them, because my ponderosa lemons are so big and they have a really thick rind. So I'm going to dehydrate all of that, because I've tried just putting the zest in the refrigerator. If you don't use it up, it's going to mold. I've tried freezing it, and it's okay, but I don't think it's as good. So I'm going to try dehydrating it, and it works way better. Oh, Madeline says, I haven't dehydrated food in a long time. Well, pull that dehydrator out there or use your oven and do some stuff and then let me know what you do. Anne says she really wanted a freeze dryer to try all those things to do. Um, I have looked at dehydrators multiple times. My only thing is, one, they cost a lot of money. Two, if the grid would ever go down, I wouldn't be able to run it without, because we have a good generator, but I would have to use the generator for refrigerators, freezers, things like that, not for one of those. Where I'm actually, one of my goals for down here is to make an outdoor dehydrator down here in Arizona, because why not take advantage of the sun that we have, and so that is something I'm going to try to do. Charmaine makes green powder out of the greens, not lettuce, and then adds them to everything. Oh, such a good idea, because then you're just getting all those nutrients, and a lot of things, you're not dehydrating at a very high temperature, 110, 120. I mean, there are other things, like if you're dehydrating jerky, it's a higher temperature. That's right. Arizona is an outdoor dehydrator. Well, yeah, but I want to make an official one. And I have some ideas, some plans for him. So, also tomatoes and mushrooms into different powders. Yeah, I have done the tomatoes so many times because, man, you just can add it to a zillion different recipes and such good flavor. Because honestly, you get to a point that your freezers are full, your pantries are full, you have too many cans of tomatoes or too many cans of whatever fruit or vegetable that you've canned. What are you going to do with the rest of the stuff? Because some years you have this just overabundance of, say, tomatoes. And you can freeze them, you can cook them, you can can them, but don't forget to dehydrate them, because dehydrating tomatoes is fabulous. You cut them really thin, you get that kind of like tomato chip like thing. One of the other things I like to do, and this is probably one of my weirdest things I've ever dehydrated, but totally so good. Bread and butter pickles. You slice them across so they're thin. You can actually use store-bought bread and butter pickles. I've done it with dill pickles, and you dehydrate them, and it has an unusual taste. It's like a chip, so if you like dill pickle chips, you will love these. But that bread and butter, that sweetness in there, and you're dehydrating them, man, they are just fabulous. And such a weird, different kind of thing. And so then you have company over and you give them some, and it's just like craziness. Julie says, anyone want parsley? It's the size of a bush. Only real success from last year's garden. I love parsley. Yeah, I mean, almost everybody puts, like, if you're making garlic toast, like on French bread, people sprinkle parsley, but there is just so many things that you can add parsley to, and it gives it a really good flavor. And I think sometimes we forget that we can dehydrate so many of those herbs that are in your garden so that you can use them all through the year. And like Julie, if you have an overabundance of it, why not dehydrate it and then give it to friends? Put them in some pretty packages, give them at Christmas time, give them at birthdays, maybe a whole bunch of different things that you've dehydrated. And what a great gift that people can use and use and use. And then it's just a reminder of your friendship every time they're using that. And I think that is a really fun thing to do. And you will just be so surprised when you have dehydrated pickles. Now, the only two I've ever tried are the bread and butter and the dill pickles, but both of them are really good. I kind of prefer bread and butter because I like that better than a dill pickle anyway. But even if you don't pickle yourself, go to the store. You want to drain them really good. Put them in your colander and let them sit overnight, and just let them drain, because otherwise they take longer to dehydrate. So it's tasty and in this weird kind of way, and you're going, and then all those flavors start going in your mouth, and it's like, wow. And so they're kind of fun. I used to sell them at the farmer's market, and they were just a total hit. You just can't even keep them on your table at the farmer's market. Madeline says, definitely going to try bread and butter pickles. Great idea. Are calories higher after dehydrating? No, I would guess that they were less, because you would it would evaporate a lot of this stuff. So I wouldn't think that it could be more at all. So I would guess less, because even though it's dehydrating just the liquid, parts of the stuff is still getting evaporated when the liquid evaporates. So I think it would be less. That's an interesting question. I'll do some research on that, but that's what I think off the top of my head anyway. So it's kind of interesting, and so we have dehydrated about every herb that we've ever grown. I think probably about every single vegetable I have tried. Now, some staples of dehydrating is like when you have an overabundance of onions, I slice them all up. Sometimes I chop them and I dehydrate them. Now, some of them I'll leave just how they shrink up. And then other ones, I'll send through my Vitamix and just pulverize it. So you have onion powder, and that's really good. I've made garlic powder. I'm trying to think of any vegetable that I grow that I haven't actually tried to dehydrate, because it just works so well. Now, I'd probably take that back. I don't know if I've ever dehydrated lettuce. I mean, I think I could. That's not the question. But we just usually eat lettuce fresh. Though I have put it in soup sometimes, because different kinds of lettuces have different flavors. I don't grow iceberg lettuce. And one of my favorite vegetables that are growing this year in my garden is Chinese cabbage. Now, when those leaves are young, that is the best tasting leaf you will eat out of your garden. And I would just go out there and be watering. I'm breaking off one of the leaves on there, and I would just eat it. It was fantastic. And so then I'm telling my friends down here, oh, you got to try this. So I'm making them come over to the garden, and I'm giving them leaves so that they can eat Chinese cabbage. And the outside leaves, the older they get, they're not as good. But those outer leaves I could still dehydrate and still put in my soups and casseroles and things like that. This is a good idea, because I knew that Angie was doing this. She's dehydrating frozen vegetables, and Kimber, her little pup dog, she adds it to the dog food. So they don't take up space in the freezer. But now she has a new freezer. She does. It was a gift for Christmas, and they were picking it up this week. So yay. How about horseradish? Oh, well, see, you could dehydrate horseradish. And I grow horseradish. And I didn't think about that. I haven't dehydrated that. But I think what I would do is I would take my horseradish and just use my slicer and just cut it so thin, and then dehydrate it like that. Then you could grind it if you wanted to. It's very dense. And things the more dense they are, the more you need to have very thin slices or very thin pieces when you go to dehydrate it, because you don't want it to be dehydrated on the outside and not on the inside, because then it will mold. It doesn't matter where you put it. You put it in the freezer and it would be okay. But the idea is not to have your stuff in the freezer. We're trying to save space here. Charmaine says, then be sure to condition your powder. Shake it a couple times a day for a week or so. This is true. And this is a good way to test if it needs to go back into the dehydrator, because things will seem like they're all the moisture is out. But when you're shaking and it's kind of clumpy, it needs to go back into the dehydrator. It's like when I was doing the mushrooms, they looked like they were done. They felt like they were done. And so I just shut it off. The next morning, they were soft in some spots again. So then I just left them all on the tray and I dehydrated them longer. So sometimes it can fool you, that heat's drying it out, but then when the heat is off, that warm air that's moving, moisture from the air sucks back in there. And so you just really want to make sure, most things, they don't necessarily have to be crunchy, but they have to be pliable. And a lot of times when you're moving them back and forth, they'll break apart. But the thicker it is, the longer it's going to take. So that's why you want to be pretty uniform when you go to slicing whatever vegetable or herb or fruit that you're using. Could use it like wasabi, since it has taste is similar. That's true. Wasabi is so hot. But I have horseradish growing back home, so I will try that when I go back home. Christine says, come on, pop up there. Oh, there it goes. It wouldn't pop up at first. When's the best time to harvest horseradish? Well, I think the best time is in the fall. But, if you've had that horseradish in there for a long time, I think anytime in the summer you could dig it up, because it's just going to keep getting bigger or adding more roots. And so, but usually I do it in the fall time. Probably because it's just one of those things that you're harvesting anyway. And it's like, oh, I'm going to harvest I need to harvest some horseradish. Horseradish is not one of Joe's favorite things to have, but horseradish is really good when you're adding it to things. And a lot of times you make a kind of a cream sauce with it, so it's not quite as powerful. But if you're making fire cider, you need horseradish. So there's a lot of things that you can use horseradish for. And it's one of those plants that actually is a beautiful plant. I mean, those leaves come straight up. They're huge. I like the vein of that leaf, because it's a little bit different color than the leaf. And then it'll flower too. So you might as well enjoy those plants. Now, can you dehydrate the leaf? Has anybody done that? That's interesting, because I've never eaten the horseradish leaf, but I'm thinking that you probably can. I'll have to Google that, because there are some things that you can eat the root, but you can't eat the leaf. So I'll have to do some research on that. But I'm thinking, I bet you probably can. And it's probably that horseradish taste, but not as powerful as the root. So that I'm going to look up, because you might as well use the entire plant instead of just part of it. I mean, all that stuff can go in your compost. Some things your chickens will eat and some things they won't eat. I haven't ever given my chickens horseradish leaves. I usually just let them die back, so I always know where the plant is. But I have a few horseradish plants now, some different kinds, and so I really need to harvest them when I get back home. And it's been nice here. So my garden has started to really grow. All the pumpkin plants are sending out runners now, where the nights were cool. And so that is interesting. Oh, Angie, look, Google says that the leaves are edible. So I'm going to try that, because that could make some interesting additions. Like you could put horseradish leaves under a chicken when it was cooking, and you could see how it influences the meat while all that steam is pulling through the leaves. I think you could just do a lot of things. You could add little bits of it to salads, appetizers. Yeah, just all kinds of stuff you could do with horseradish. I think we should do videos this summer on all the crazy things you can do with horseradish. I mean, you can buy horseradish in the store, usually late summer to fall. And depending on how big your store is, you might be able to get it anytime during the year. And that could be some interesting videos on the crazy things that you do with horseradish. And I could dehydrate it. I could just do all kinds of stuff. I like the idea. So thanks, Anne, for looking that up, because I was going to do it afterwards. Now we are already at 30 minutes. I don't know how that's possible. How can I talk for 30 minutes without stopping? I don't know. But I am going to let you go. I got to run over to Staples. They have some stuff ready for me, they said, because I dropped it off earlier today. I'm going to eat some mushrooms. And I will see you next time. I did put up my video on my mini stackable planters today. And I put in cacti and succulents. So next week, because I have several of these little stackables, they're only about this wide. About online it says they're 8.5 inches, but they're not 8.5 inches. They're maybe 6.5 inches across. And I'm going to plant some herbs in them, and I'm going to plant some microgreens in some of them. So it'll be fun. But I stacked it 5 high. It's on my outside table, and it is cute. So check out that video. And I will see you, of course, next week and the videos that I put out this week. So everybody, thank you so much. And I'm almost to 75,000 subscribers. So thank you very much for that. And I will see you next time. Bye, everybody.